Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. This is Dr. Soul Brother at you again on this channel with the remedy to help cure your ills. I want to address something that's very important. I'm going to get right to it. I'm sure by now everybody is aware of the recent documentary done by Tariq Nasheed called Microphone Check. Well, Dr. Soul Brother had a chance to check it out. And I have to say, Mr. Tariq Nasheed put his foot in it. I greatly appreciate this film because it's a film that affirms, affirms Black American culture. You know, it's one thing to say for your blackness to be affirmed, that's one thing, and that's important. But for the Black American culture to be affirmed, that's a whole nother situation. This film represents a slam dunk to the Puerto Ricans and to the Jamaicans who claim to have either started hip hop or working 50-50. Now, people were saying Puerto Ricans and black folk in America were working 50-50. And then they claim that Jamaicans started hip hop because of DJ Kool Herc. I'm going to get to him in a minute. But let me say this there's no empirical evidence to back up this notion that Puerto Ricans and black Americans worked 50-50. And there's no empirical evidence by extension about Jamaicans starting hip hop. How could Jamaicans have started hip hop when hip hop started here in the United States by black Americans and black Americans who had roots here? Okay. Um, it's like the guy Notorious Big, aka Biggie Smalls, aka Christopher Wallace, who was born and raised in Brooklyn, New York, but Jamaican parents, because he could rhyme and had skills that somehow that is a reflection of his Jamaican roots. No, it wasn't. No, it isn't. Okay. Um, uh, these folks are just like their colonial masters, just like them, whether you're talking about the Spaniards or the Brits, etc., who try to take over things and put their stamp on it and claim it as theirs. One of the things I want to address is why this film resonates with me, not the sole reason, but one of the reasons why the film resonates with me the way it does is because, you know, growing up, um, there was a lot of things pertaining to our culture, the music, our style, etc., that I remember. I remember very well. I remember going to a record store almost every day after school. I lived in that joint. And in there, I got exposed to not only, the music that was popular back in the day, but also some of the records, um, like LaWanda Page. You all know her from Sanford and Son playing Aunt Esther. Those comedy records, Red Fox, etc. Well, also, even before then, just on a personal note, I got exposed as a boy coming up. My aunt's ex-husband had some records. Now he was from um, Anniston, Alabama, and he had some records. Pigmeat Markham. I cannot remember if he had Here Comes the Judge. It's possible, but I know for sure. I remember Pigmeat Markham, Mom's Mabley, Red Fox, Godfrey Cambridge. Um, and not only that, he had blues records, Jimmy Reed, Muddy Waters, John Lee Hooker, etc. And some of this stuff was on the VJ label. All right. So I got exposed to that stuff. Curtis Mayfield, what's his name? Clyde McFadder, Brooke Benton, etc. I'm bringing it up to say that when you look at the film, that some of the people who were in it were exposed by those records coming up because those were the records of their parents, their uncles, their aunties, etc. Well, that was my experience, in a lot of ways. So I can relate to that. But um, I have to also say that this, from what I can see, the fervor surrounding this film, like in a place like New York, the reason why it's jumping off like that is because this is the first time in years, decades, really, decades, where you had Black Americans who are New Yorkers, born and raised with roots here, were celebrating Black American culture in a long time. And I have to say this to my New York brothers and sisters. Some of this is y'all's fault, because New Yorkers, and I've been to New York, but some of y'all as New Yorkers distance yourselves from your Southern roots. And by doing that, that opened the gate for Caribbean folks to come in and become culture vultures. So at some point, y'all gonna have to own that. Okay, we need to be real clear on that. Um, I am convinced, though this is not in the film, but this is Dr. Soul Brother talking. I am convinced that a man out of Jamaica by the name of Jeff Dixon, aka Free Eye, was influenced by Frankie Crocker out of New York. If you listen to Jeffrey Dixon, aka Free Eye, and his style, and you listen to Frankie Crocker out of New York, they're similar. Hopefully, one day we can delve into that. But um, Jeff, just so y'all know, Jeff Dixon, aka Free Eye, was a friend of the reggae star Peter Tosh, and he worked with him. And unfortunately, he was killed when in Peter Tosh's home in September of 1987 with Peter Tosh, and that was a horrible tragedy. But that's a conversation for another day. But I'm bringing him up today because he himself was a radio personality, Jeff Dixon, aka Free Eye. And if you listen to his style, and then you listen to Frankie Crocker, they're similar. Okay, but again, that needs to be looked into. Also, the shortwave radio exposed Jamaicans to radio stations from Miami, Florida, New Orleans, Louisiana, and Nashville, Tennessee. And on those stations, you had what? Yeah, you had white radio disc jockeys, but also you had the black radio disc jockeys who brought a certain finesse, coolness, a certain swag, if you will, to the table. So they got exposed to that. And not only that, um, if you watch, which by the way, much of this film complements a documentary called The Studio One Story with a man named Coxon Dye, who started Studio One Records in Jamaica. Before he started that record label, he was a mechanic and he also did farm work in in Florida, South Florida, with other Jamaicans. And while there, they got exposed to a lot of the R&B music that was being played, and they would party with the Americans and all that kind of stuff. And so some of that music, Mr. Dodd would bring back to Jamaica with him. And so that was another way when he set up the sound system that his fellow countrymen got exposed to the black music from America that they couldn't get enough of. All right. So, um, this film, Microphone Check, helps to complement that documentary. If nobody has seen it, I would encourage you to see Microphone Check, and I would also encourage you to see the Studio One story. You can put in Studio One story on YouTube, and it'll pop up there. It's about 2 hours and change. It's about almost as long as Microphone Check is, and it keeps your attention. But getting back to this, and I want to address um, uh, DJ Kool Herc. Now, DJ Kool Herc from Jamaica came to the United States when he was 12 in 1967. Without question, Herc is somebody who was influential as it relates to the, uh, hip hop and everything, and with the DJing. There's no question about that. But guess what? He is not the father of, or the founder of hip hop. Because first of all, there's more to hip hop than just rap. Um, Hip hop deals with rap. It also deals with graffiti. It also deals with breakdancing, etc. And breakdancing, of course, goes back to the 1970s. I was always under the impression or the assumption that it started in the 80s. Well, I was wrong. It goes back to the 70s. So, you have to ask yourself the question whether it's um, Herc or other um, Caribbean folk. Were they doing that in the Caribbean? The answer is no, if they would be honest. And unfortunately, we have not been dealing with honest brokers, and that's led to a lot of unnecessary problems. Um, I understand that Kool Herc at some point was trying to see about putting together a hip hop museum in Jamaica. This was right before COVID. Then when COVID hit, things shut down. Well, I'll tell you right now, Herc, if you're listening in the clouds or anybody who knows him, check this out. You better not put that museum in Jamaica right now. And if you do, you better come correct. And in truth, being inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame like that, that wasn't cool. Because Herc, you know, you are not the father of hip hop. You're not. And for you to accept that award shows a lack of integrity. A lack of integrity. Okay? It's no coincidence or not accidental that on the cover of the Source magazine back in the 90s, you had Kool Herc, Grandmaster Flash, and Africa Bambaataa deemed as the fathers um, of hip hop. Well, they did that clearly because all three of them have island roots. Herc out of Jamaica, Flash out of Barbados, and Africa Bambaataa, aka Bam, born and raised here in the U.S., but has Jamaican and Barbadian roots. So that was intentional. That's like a little Trinity thing they got that going there. The other thing I think is important to understand regarding this film, and I plan to see it again when it shows in theaters again. Um, you need to know something about anthropology and history and all that stuff. Because again, this film affirms Black American culture. It affirms it. And as far as Mr. Buster Rhymes and Mr. Pete Rock, y'all a bunch of straight up cowards. Now, this film was showed in New York. Where you at, Buster? Where you at, Pete Rock? Y'all have nothing to say right now. Nothing. And you know you especially, Buster, lying through your teeth. Talking about we don't have no culture. And not only that, you also talk about um, uh, what the Puerto Ricans did and what the Jamaicans did. You know good and well that stuff don't come from there. And you from New York, all those OGs who were in this film, you should have been talking to them. Which brings me to something else. Nobody, there was a document on PBS. I'm not going to sit here and say nobody should watch that documentary. I would encourage you to watch it, but do this. Watch that documentary and then watch Tariq Nasheed's microphone check film and make a comparative contrast. And you'll arrive at certain conclusions. And you'll see for yourself what's true and what's not true. You know, it's like the saying about a dirty glass over here and a clean glass over here. And if you have any integrity, you'll be able to see which is the dirty glass and which is the clean glass. So, the and also I want to get this in. You know, though this is not in the film, but it's important. Biggie Smalls, aka Notorious B.I.G. freestyling rap that you see when he was a 17-year-old. Um, that clearly comes from over here in the U.S. Not didn't reflect his island roots. And there was a song called the Name Game song by a woman named Shirley Ellis. Well, Shirley Ellis was from the Bronx, born and raised, but guess what? She had island roots. One parent from Montserrat, the other one, I believe, from the Bahamas or somewhere. So, you know, the fact of the matter is, our culture here in the United States has been very influential all over the globe. All over the globe. It's okay for people to participate and have an appreciation for it. But when you begin to engage in theft and then try to act like oh it come from us when you know it didn't, that's a problem. And I'm gonna end with this. If anybody's not aware, check out an article that was published May 2nd, 2022 on Urweb, that's EURWEB.com. Articles about debunking the myth and lies of the origins of hip hop. Many ways, this documentary and that article complement each other. Again, the article can be found on www.urweb.com. Debunking the myth and lies of the origins of hip hop. And it was published May 2nd, 2022, 2 years ago. So this documentary is timely. And now that we're about to hit the Olympics, and all this. I mean, it's clear. This is the whole thing about the lies because it's a money grab. So the it's important. It's very important that um, we embrace our culture here in these United States, not be shamed and guilted as it relates to um, uh, our history in this country, what we have contributed. It's like Langston Hughes said, "I too am America." No, that's real. That's very, very real. So I want to encourage my listeners, keep this momentum going. Just keep it going. Don't drop the ball with this. Okay. This thing with the music, that's only one part of it, but there are other things pertaining to our culture uh, that's very, very important. So with that, I'm gonna end it. I didn't want to be on here long, but I wanted to get this in. But it's important that people support this film when it shows in theaters again, and when it goes to Blu-ray, get copies of it and share this film with other people who you know. Until the next time, God bless.